Well, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. I'm joined by Gabrielle Woodhouse of the Bureau of Meteorology, Commissioner Carleen York of the State Emergency Service, and Acting Deputy Police Commissioner Peter Cotter to provide a weather update, a preparedness update for the communities of New South Wales. Well, we've seen a lot of rain around Sydney today. But it's only going to get worse, unfortunately. Saturday is likely to be our danger day for Sydney and surrounding areas. We know that our catchments are saturated, the dams are full, and our rivers are already swollen. So any extra rainfall, no matter how minor, is likely to exacerbate existing flooding circumstances. Indeed, any additional rainfall has the potential to cause riverine flooding and flash flooding. I'd like to reinforce some particular messages for communities across New South Wales today. We know that we're going to see increased traffic on our roads as school holidays draw to a close and with the Bathurst 1000 on this weekend. We're asking people respectfully to allow for additional travel time over the coming days. Please drive and traverse our landscape with great caution. This coming weekend period. If the road is flooded, forget it. We do say it time and time again, but it's more important now than ever. With increased rainfall and unpredictable rainfall in certain parts of New South Wales, it doesn't take much for a road to become flooded, for your vehicle to become stranded, or worse, washed away and submerged. The SES now has a new warning system in place that we have been communicating to communities extensively over the past couple of months, but it's a good time for me to reinforce that this new warning system is in place, and it's designed to provide clearer, more straightforward messaging for communities. It consolidates 7 prior levels of warning into just 3. These are advice, watch and act, and emergency alert. I'll now who'll provide a weather briefing for you all today, followed by Commissioner York, who will go through some of the preparedness that the SES has been leading over the last few weeks. Of course, we know they've been on high alert, really haven't stopped now for well over 18 months, with some of those Western communities in particular having been in flood now for over 12 months. And then Mr. Cotter will provide an update on policing arrangements for the weekend and deliver some important messages for motorists as we head into the weekend and beyond. Thank you.
Hi everybody. So across New South Wales, we're expecting a very significant and elevated flood risk over the coming days. This is particularly true across inland parts of the state as well as through central eastern parts of New South Wales. This is for both riverine flooding and flash flooding. We've already observed widespread rain and thunderstorms across inland areas of New South Wales over the past 24 to 36 hours. Some places in the far west of the state have significant. We are expecting more rain and thunderstorms to come. Today we are looking at the risk of severe thunderstorms in the very far west of the state, and this includes the risk of isolated supercells out over the southwest parts of the inland of New South Wales. These storms are quite severe in nature and they can bring the risk of heavy rain, flash flooding, as well as damaging winds and some hail. However, over the next couple of days we're expecting another system to move across the state. We're looking at a trough and cold front moving across New South Wales on Friday. That's where we'll start to see a low pressure system form and move off the coast during Saturday and Sunday. This system is quite a significant and serious system, as we are looking at widespread rain as well as thunderstorms coming through with this system. As we see that low pressure system develop, we may also start to see increase in rain, wind and waves near the coast. And this is particularly true along parts of the Hunter, Sydney and Illawarra coasts. Now, if we take a closer look at the flooding risk across New South Wales for the coming days, we are looking at renewed and prolonged flooding across inland parts of New South Wales, and we're expecting that flood risk to move further east during the weekend. We already have a flood watch out at the moment, and this gives a heads up for potential for further flooding for those catchments over the coming days. At the moment, this does include major flooding across quite a number of catchments across New South Wales. So along the western slopes, this includes the Gwydir, the Namoy, the Macquarie, Lachlan, Belubula and Bogan rivers. Closer to the coast, through parts of the Hunter, this also includes the Wallenby Brook, Goulburn and Hunter rivers. There are many more catchments involved in this flood watch, looking at minor to moderate flooding, and this also includes parts of the Hawkesbury Nepean, of which there was a flood warning issued early this morning for minor flooding at North Richmond, and potentially down at Menangle and Penrith later this afternoon. The flood outlook for some areas on the western slopes looks set to worsen on the weekend and potentially reach significant major flood levels. And this is particularly true for places along the western slopes, and this includes places like Bathurst, Warren, Gunnedah, Weewar and Forbes. Many communities across Western New South Wales have already experienced fairly significant flooding this year, and fairly significant flood impacts that have ranged from weeks to months. There are already many flood warnings in place, and the systems at the moment are quite complex in terms of seeing multiple flood peaks moving down the different river systems. And this means that with the rainfall forecast, we're expecting that system to become a little bit more complicated, and for that flooding to be prolonged and potentially become a little bit more elevated, and cause potentially much more widespread flooding and extensive flooding. The flooding that we're looking at, it looks as though it's going to be more significant than what we have been seeing over the past 12 months. With catchments so wet and many dams at and near capacity, waterways at the moment are incredibly sensitive to any rainfall that falls. This means that the rivers are going to respond really quickly, and we can see localised flooding even away from some of those river systems and creeks. Our message for the community for the coming days is to prepare now, know what you need and how to get around. Be aware of the flood risk, not only where you are, but where you might be travelling to and travelling through. This is incredibly important if people are travelling around, and the best thing to do is to monitor the forecasts and warnings from the Bureau's website and app. They are updated very, very frequently at the moment, and that the flood risk will be narrowed down over the coming days as we start to see that rainfall. With that, I'll pass over to Commissioner Carling-York.
Thank you. So the New South Wales SES has been working very closely with the Bureau of Meteorology over the last 7 to 10 days as these weather events have been forecast. We've been out there preparing the community and sending messages out to the community about what they might expect today, and as spoken about by the Bureau, it is on top of full dams, saturated land and overflowing rivers already. So this will only exacerbate the problem. So it's really important for the community to be prepared. So no two floods are the same, and just because you haven't been affected by floods before does not mean you may not be affected by floods during these events that are here and are coming in the next few days. So I'd ask any property owners, particularly in the regional areas, to get their livestock and animals to higher ground and be prepared so that you're not calling out for assistance when needed urgently. There are a lot of people travelling around the state, so if you are on the roads, and Deputy Commissioner Cotter will talk about road safety in a moment, but take some food, extra water. If you are caught where there is water across the road, turn around and find an alternate route, and just be prepared that your travels may take longer than you anticipated, particularly at the coming towards the end of the school holidays, and particularly understand the risk of the area. Unsealed roads in the regional areas at the moment are dangerous to go along. You will find information on your local council website, which is very informative for you to be able to plan your trip ahead. So as I said, if there's water across the road, please do not drive through that, and sometimes you may get stuck between the water across the road. Please make sensible decisions, turn around, find another alternate route. because you will be placing either yourselves and your family or loved ones in the vehicle at some risk, and you will also be placing our volunteers and other emergency service agency personnel at some risk to go in and rescue you. So we have many volunteers, and we're working very closely with our partner agencies to prepare and to respond to the requests for the community. So the New South Wales SES has pre-positioned a number of assets out across the areas at risk, being helicopters and also our new high clearance vehicles, which are able to access areas that otherwise would not have been got into with our normal vehicles and trucks. And that is a great asset for the community, that if you need us, we can get through where it is safe to do so. At the moment, we're particularly looking at areas around Forbes, Gunnedah, Bathurst and Warren, which may experience significant flooding this weekend. And there is always the chance, depending on the rainfalls and the extent of the rainfall, for flash flooding. So that is a high risk for these communities that will be affected over this period of time. The most recent flood warnings for the Hunter, putting it at possible major flooding, is of concern for us as well. So we would ask the community around those areas to be really aware of what messages that the New South Wales SES are putting out and what the Bureau are forecasting in relation to the weather. That flood risk may go from the Hunter across to the Central Coast. So there are large areas of the state that are being impacted by these weather events. And as I say, the area is particularly saturated, so it doesn't take a high rainfall to have a significant effect on our waterways. We have some forecast for possible minor flooding around the Hawkesbury and Nepean, but again, we have pre-positioned resources out there to assist the community. And I would remind the community that if you do want assistance from the SES, to ring 132 500, but if it is life-threatening, ring 000. And we will endeavour to get out and respond to your request for assistance as soon as possible. So again, look at the New South Wales website. The Minister mentioned our new Hazard Watch information that is there. It's very clear. There are the 3 levels, but it also tells you what you should do as a result of our information, our messages putting out there. I would encourage residents that are at risk of areas of flooding to have an emergency kit with your important documents, a torch, a battery operated radio, any medication. Think about your domestic pets and take their provisions in case you do have to evacuate quickly. We will try and give you as much notice as possible, but this particular event on saturated ground means that things can happen very quickly. So don't assume you will get a warning and it may go straight to an evacuation order. So please be aware of those messages, and if you make safe decisions, you will keep everyone safe. Thank you. I'll hand over to Deputy Commissioner Cotter.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you very much for the opportunity. This weekend is iconic in the Australian sporting calendar. It accommodates the Bathurst 1000 races. It also coincides with the end of school holidays. It also coincides with what has been described as a very wet weekend coming up, clearly. Our message is very simple. For those going to the races, which will come from all parts of Metro Sydney and from interstate, with predominantly driving being the way that these people will get there, please be some delays. Understand that there'll be some wet weather along your journeys, so please take your time. Our general messaging around any sort of driving in the wet is take 10 or 20 kilometres off your speed. Speed still remains the greatest danger on our roads to both the driver themselves and anyone that they pass. So please, all drivers, please don't race to the races and don't race home from school holidays. It is not worth the trauma and the tragedy which could flow if something were to happen to you and your family. Specific to this weekend, as has been described by the Minister and all my colleagues in emergency services, there will be some flooding in certain parts of potentially Metro, on the outskirts of Metro Sydney, but particularly in the central western area. Had some tragedies in recent weeks where cars and extended communities are traumatised. Please bear that in mind. Turn around, map your route, understand what you're getting yourself into, and clearly do not drive through flood waters. The rivers are full, the creeks are full, the causeways which bridge from point to point across these rivers are also under extreme stress in a lot of these remote areas. This weekend the police will be out, as always, in force, making sure that people drive safely into the conditions. Again, do not touch your mobile phones, do not add any sort of stress to the journey. Make it a joyful one for you and your family, and make sure you get home or to your destination and back home again safe. We look forward to all of the people attending Bathurst races this week, and clearly understand that the races are very much on, and those drivers will drive to the conditions. So take a lead out of their book. Look at how they drive and understand what their experience levels are. Don't try and mimic, clearly, the speeds they do, as I've already said. Back it right off, get there safe, and come home safe, whether it be holidays or anything in between. The Highway Patrol will be out in all major roads, arterial roads, and clearly back roads. With respect of the emergency services side of it, please do not hesitate to clearly contact the State Emergency Service or the New South Wales Police if you find yourself in a position of peril. We will drop everything to come and assist you. That's what our job is, and we will certainly rise to the occasion. That said, to everyone out there, please enjoy your journeys this weekend, enjoy the rest of your holidays, and keep yourself safe. Don't take any undue risks, and we'll be there to help you if you do get in trouble. But please understand that it is a tricky weekend. Thank you.
Minister, I just want to ask, to be clear, in terms of Western Sydney, what's the situation look like for communities on the Nepean and Hawkesbury, like Richmond and Windsor, and what's your message to them as well, given how many flood events they've been through in the last 18 months? Yeah,
that's a good question. I'll ask Gabrielle to give a little bit more detail in relation to the specific situation out there in Hawkesbury Nepean, but my message to the communities of the Hawkesbury Nepean is that we're very much on your side. We will continue to work with you through these challenging times. It's been month after month of it, really, in that part of the world. It's not lost on me for one moment that there are many communities through the Hawkesbury Nepean that have experienced 4 floods in 18 months, and that there is anxiety in the community. That is completely understandable under the circumstances. What we are asking of the community again, and they've continued to step up time and time again, just keep working with us through this time. Pay attention to the advice put out by the Bureau of Meteorology and the warnings and the advice of the State Emergency Service. This information is put out to the public and to those communities in particular to keep them safe, to keep you and your family safe. We don't take this messaging lightly, and if we all continue to work together, then we will get through the next few days, and indeed we are expected with a third consecutive La Nina, we are expecting to have a wet spring continued and a wet summer. So it's incumbent upon all of us to have that, or to be cognizant of that shared responsibility to keep each other safe at this time, and asking the communities very much to work with us. And I'll ask Gabrielle if she'd like to make some more comments about Hawkesbury Nepean.
So currently, across the Hawkesbury Nepean, we are already seeing minor flooding out at North Richmond, and we're expecting minor flooding to occur at Menangle later this afternoon, and potentially also at Penrith. Now, the Floodwatch and looking at some of the modelling of the rainfall forecasts and what the river systems are doing across the weekend, it is going to be dependent on how much rainfall we see fall across the entire Hawkesbury Nepean catchment. So at the moment, our best modelling is showing minor flooding across the Hawkesbury Nepean. But if we start to see that low pressure system stay for a little bit longer and produce a little bit more rain, that's where you can see those river levels increase further. So at the moment, our best information is minor flooding, but it could easily go upwards if we see more rainfall.
Minister, back to you. On Matt Keane, do you think he's been forced to backflip on his opposition to the raising of the Warragamba Dam wall?
Well, the Premier's made it quite clear. He was emphatic yesterday, well supported by the Minister for Planning, the Minister for Water, and in my space as the Minister for Emergency Services, that this is critical infrastructure for the state of New South Wales that must proceed. It is the single biggest action that we can take as a government to mitigate for flood in the Hawkesbury Nepean area and protect lives, protect property and protect livelihoods. We've been very clear on that, and that's the position of the New South Wales government.
How much will raising the Warragamba Dam wall cost in environmental mitigation? Does the government know that?
Look, as Minister for Emergency Services, I think your question would be better directed to either the Minister for Planning or perhaps the Minister for Water with respect to these questions. I can only reiterate as Minister for Emergency Services that this project is important with respect to protecting lives and property and livelihoods.
So is it disappointing that, as a Nationals member, is it disappointing that the Warragamba Dam wall is being, I guess, treated as so significant and fast-tracked so much rather than, for example, Dungowan or Wyangla dams, which have slowed in their process since the drought broke?
These are big and complex projects. There is no doubt that this project for Warragamba are very clear. From my perspective, in the Central West, we are continuing with the work that needs to be done around Wyangla. It is a very complex project, and we are moving through the preparations for the final business case and the environmental impact statement in relation to that project. But for now, the focus, quite rightly, is on the communities of the Hawkesbury Nepean who have experienced these terrible floods, as I mentioned earlier, and we all know some communities have experienced 4 floods in 18 months. There are some communities that have never experienced flooding before, and they have found themselves with flooding in very recent times. So this is
going ahead, it's going to be years before this is actually completed, and even then it's not going to stop floodwaters, it's just delaying them. So what are you doing for communities sort of, now in the next 2, 3, 5 years, even in the next year, just to address this, because these weather events are coming thick and fast?
Yes, thank you for the question. We continue to work very closely with communities, with local governments. We continue to consult with the federal flood inquiry report. We have accepted or supported all 28 recommendations in that report, 6 of them in full, the other 22 in principle. We are working at pace to adopt those recommendations and implement them to make sure that we continue to work with communities to keep them safe right across New South Wales, because to your point, we do expect to see more of these types of events into the future.
Why wasn't the dam level lowered after June's flood? Was that a mistake?
I'd ask you to direct your question to the Minister for Water in relation to the releases that come out of the Warragamba Dam. Thank you.
Just speaking of inland communities, the at the moment. At times in the last few weeks it's been at about 140%, and that the flows are just causing the Macquarie River to flood through their town. But during the drought, that dam was too low. They want a second dam in that town. Is that something that's on your radar?
Well, I'd ask you to direct your question with reference to that particular dam to the Minister for Water, who has remit over those matters. What I would say from an emergency services perspective is that we continue to work closely with the community of Warren and communities right across Western New South Wales, acknowledging that they have been in various states of flood for the past 12 months or more. The communities out there are extremely resilient. I'm very, very proud of how they have handled the last 12 months and how they continue to work with the New South Wales Government, with our emergency services agencies, and we will continue to work closely with them. They are protected through this time.
Obviously the rainfall record is pretty close to breaking. Is the increased moisture and rainfall something the Bureau is expecting to see with climate change?
Look, so at the moment, I'm assuming you're talking about Sydney Observatory Hill. So we're pretty close to the annual wettest year on record. But at the moment, for what we're expecting for the coming months is still for a wet outlook. So it's likely that we'll probably approach that record, if not break it, over the coming days. And for the remainder of spring and through summer, with the climate drivers the way they are currently, we are expecting wetter conditions to persist. And probably not going to see that breakdown until we see the La Nina start to weaken and move back towards neutral territory, as well as the Indian Ocean dipole, weaken back to neutral as well. In terms of what happens with climate change, we know that for every degree that we've warmed up in the atmosphere, that can hold about 7% more moisture in the atmosphere, and that correlates to how much rain you see on the ground. So since over the past 100 years or so, we've already increased our average temperature by about 1.47 degrees. So that means that we can hold a hell of a lot more water in the atmosphere, which means that we are more likely to see heavy rainfall events, and when we do see the systems line up to produce that tropical moisture in the atmosphere.